Hello, everyone. Welcome
Hey
once
again.
again to a discussion about immersive technology and virtual reality. I am Jared Lynch, and today I am joined by, if y'all want to introduce yourselves.
Where,
Right.
Levy?
James Hunt.
Where we got Meg Noakes. Hello.
There we go.
Hello, awesome. And so today we are going to be talking about virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality, and what the difference is between those things, why it is even important to differentiate between them, and kind of what the strengths and weaknesses of each of those specific mediums are. So actually, Meg and I have been kind of doing some work on making an online museum of kind of the difference between these two. So it's pretty fresh. It's really fresh in my mind. But yeah, we'll just go ahead and kind of talk about what is virtual reality.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, honestly, spoiler, there isn't technically any really good difference between them because they're all using similar types of technology. And when we talk about the differences between them, we're talking about like differences of nuance or the context in which they're used or whether or not they use a certain element more than another. We can argue more about this later, but I guess like for me, virtual reality is when basically everything you're interacting with is virtual. You might have controllers and you're wearing the physical headset, but everything you see, everything you perceive as a part of the world as having like meaning in what you're doing is something that's generated by the computer, and it's not part of the room that you're in or anything you're touching or anything.
And it's simulated, I would say. It's like a simulated experience. And it can look very realistic. It can look very similar to our physical reality, but it can look very, very different, such as like Golf Simulator is very like comic-y and kind of over the top. And also kind of like how I would think about like virtual reality as compared to something like 360 video or something else where it's like an immersive environment is like the interactivity. So it's like, whereas like there's like virtual like cinema, such as like virtual like short films, but it's definitely like the interactivity of virtual environments.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the reality part of it, where it's not just a virtual experience. It's a virtual experience you're interacting with. It feels real because of the fact that you can reach out and touch things or do things. If all you're doing is passively watching, like we're used to watching movies enough that even if I'm turning my head around and seeing stuff, I still know I'm just watching a movie. But now if I can reach out and grab a thing in that movie and throw it, that feels like I'm really there. It feels real.
Yeah, and then I guess, and that can also kind of segue into what, so if not specifically like 360 videos, but there's like a short film called like Henry. It's about like a porcupine who wants to make friends, but no one wants to hug him. He loves hugging people, but it's just like, so it's like, would you argue, but there's not really like interactivity, but it is like a virtual movie. So it's just like, would you all consider that to be virtual reality since it's still just kind of like a movie?
I would almost consider that to be a little different because if you think about before virtual reality came out, we had 3D, but if you were watching a movie in 3D, would you consider that virtual reality? Because in my mind, that's very different. Like where mentioned before, without the interactivity between like us and the virtual world, it doesn't really feel any different than what it is as we're perceiving it in the real world.
Okay, but then to sort of like pin you down on that, there's a different movie that Google released called Piggy, which is a 360 movie, just like Henry, but it's about a pig that wants to, I think, eat your cake. And his actions and what he does change depending on whether or not you look at him. Is that enough interaction to count as virtual reality? Or is the fact that I'm still just turning my head and looking mean that it's like something else or something different? And that's where it gets to me to be really fuzzy, where kind of we use the word virtual reality to refer to like a collection of experiences, but there's really no hard line that dictates what is or isn't like a virtual reality experience.
See, I would argue that I would say that's virtual reality, just because it's like it does have that level of interactivity.
Hmm. Maybe it's the feeling of presence, of being there. If my
Mhm.
presence changes the narrative, even if it's in a small way, it means I'm there, and that means it's real.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you have to have some sort of like, what's the best way to describe it? Your individual self has to be an entity in that space, I guess,
Mhm.
in some way, whether that's as a viewer or as an actual person slash object that you're manipulating the environment around you with.
Right.
But in 360, you're able to view the space more. In like 3D, you're kind of limited. In like 3D movies, you're kind of limited to directly what's in front of you. You can watch it, but you only have one way of viewing it. 360 films, you can view it from multiple angles at multiple different points. So if one person watches one thing one way, another person could technically watch that 360 video a different way, from looking at a different like angle or just like a different area during then. So
Mm-hmm.
my take on it.
Mhm.
Do we get Meg back?
Have we reacquired Meg?
Hello.
Maybe. All
Maybe.
right. Well, she'll keep trying.
There you go.
Oh, there you are.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome back.
I had some connectivity.
Oh.
Yes. Looks like you're still struggling a little bit.
Yes, I think. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
I'm here.
Hello.
Connect.
Oh, there we go.
Kind of. Yes.
Maybe.
More stable
Yeah.
now.
Okay.
Definitely more stable. Not perfect, but more.
It
Oh,
works.
Okay. I am present. I can hear you.
Does that mean you're in virtual reality?
All right, so then just to kind of get the conversation back, it's like augmented reality. So and then we can kind of, once you kind of establish it, we can kind of talk about them more as a holistic view. But
Yeah, absolutely.
but yeah, augmented reality. Does someone want to kind of give an overview?
Can you hear me? Am I stable?
Every
Can
5
you
or
hear
6
me?
words, you start to go with that like robot cutoff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's enough to like if you talk a little bit, it works, and then you keep talking, and I
Dang
think your phone gets overwhelmed. Oh, well, we just gotta wait for that 5G to come out.
Ah.
Soon.
Solve all our problems. Yeah, but I mean, if virtual reality is entirely virtual, augmented reality is trying to have you in the physical world feeling like you're still there, but then throwing something virtual on top of it. So augmented reality includes like everything from Snapchat filters, where you're just like throwing a pair of cat ears over your head, to something like Pokemon Go, where you're seeing the Pokemon in the environment and you're like watching your Pokeball fly across the park and hit them in the face. And companies are working on like augmented reality headsets where you're actually getting a much more immersive integration where you're looking around with these goggles and it's throwing virtual stuff on top of it. But most of those headsets that like fully use augmented reality like that are really expensive and have about 2 or 3 experiences for them total. So really when we're talking about augmented reality, we're talking about like phones and tablets using their cameras to like create an image for you that looks as if you're seeing something else added on.
So and also like talking about like headsets, so like Oculus Quest is definitely, I think that they're going to try and pivot more towards the augmented reality aspect of it, because if you're not familiar with the Oculus Quest, there are these 4 cameras in the front, and those are actually how it maps out your area. But then those cameras, they can see your environment, and I know like they've been doing a lot of stuff with hand tracking, and I think that their hope is to actually like someday like replace the laptop computer with a VR headset.
Yeah,
like yeah, super sci-fi, really cool.
And it kind of gets to that point of like augmented reality and virtual reality are converging on each other. You've got the Quest, which, since it's got those trackers, you can actually turn on what they call pass-through, and instead of seeing the virtual world, you're seeing reality through the cameras, like kind of grayed out. And you even do things in that menu, like set up your boundary space that you're going to play in. When I'm messing with that boundary space, am I in virtual reality or am I in augmented reality? Like, what type of reality is this? And as virtual reality headsets use more of reality, and as augmented reality devices put more virtual stuff into it, the difference between them is just going to cease to exist. Like 10 years from now, I don't think either of these words is going to exist the way they exist now, because the technology is just going to look totally different.
Yeah, for sure. In my mind, I think the easiest way that I think of telling virtual reality and augmented reality apart, if you think about virtual reality, it's a lot of putting people or like real life objects inside of a virtual space, where augmented reality right now is almost following the exact opposite track, where you're taking the real world space and you're putting virtual stuff into it. So like computer generated objects, other things made on your computer, designs, whatever they may be, putting it inside of the real world. Like,
Yeah.
Pokemon Go is probably the best example that I can think of for that, where they're putting like these miniature creatures / objects inside of the real world as you're going through it. But as Guerra said, as it continues, these are going to slowly merge together. I think like 10 years from now, they're going to be almost remembered as the same thing, or seen as the same thing, rather than two different things apart. As if you look at the Oculus Quest now, like you've mentioned before, like it's already got a mixture between augmented reality and virtual reality, yet no one talks about it in the aspect of augmented reality, because everyone sees it as a virtual headset.
We're going to see like a Quest 3 have like proper augmented reality experiences in games. Assuming they continue to call it the Quest number. They might just add more Qs on the front of it, like Xbox.
Yes. Well, and
Quest Q.
There you go. And then the Quest Q squared. And then when they get to the Quest Q cubed, that's when it's going to get really hype.
Let's say, Meg, you've been doing, and Guer too, but you've been looking at a lot of like AR, like educational experiences, which also, so if you want to like kind of talk about that and like how AR can be used, like especially in the classroom, like since it's like a one-to-one of iPads or Chromebooks with like a lot of schools now.
Yeah, am I cutting out at all? Can you hear me?
You're good right now.
Hear you. The audio's pretty cut, or the video's pretty bad, but the audio's coming through.
As long as the audio is cool. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I think AR just in the education space is really sweet, because I mean, we've talked about like Pokemon Go as a game, as like a cool AR tool, AR in like for stores and things like IKEA, Menards, Amazon, using it as like a tool to be able to like see a robot vacuum in your house. Like that's pretty sweet. But for education is really neat, because you can use it as like a storytelling tool basically, and you can take any concept and like show the process of how like a flower starts its life, like how it is planted, how it grows, that entire process of pollination. You can throw in like, I mean, the entire like ecosystem and how that works. So I think AR in the classroom is really cool, because it's just like another step up from being like kind of post AR, looking at things like in a textbook and like learning through it that way. Whereas when you have this like device in your hand and you're able to use that device as a lens into seeing this like virtual thing through your lens, it just adds this like bit of interactivity and like real life view that is, you can't really get that like through a textbook. So I think in the education space is a really cool place that AR is working now. And I mean, even like with Jared, you've been experimenting with it a bit too, being able to create your own objects and then put them into AR. And that's something that's cool, because you can create these three-dimensional objects in full VR, and then you can export that and bring it into augmented reality. So you can essentially like make your own like storylines or make your own objects or things and use that in the education space too.
Yeah, and also just in you brought up a good point about just like making your own objects so that you're doing that in VR. So again, it's
Yeah.
just like everything's just converging and everything's just
Right.
it is becoming like that XR, like the X reality.
Yeah,
Mm.
which we haven't talked about mixed reality yet, and that's basically the point that we were talking about where these two meet. Though it's kind of like if it's like augmented reality from the direction of virtual reality, which doesn't make any sense when you say it out loud. It made more sense in my head.
No.
But like, yeah, I mean, the example we always use at REM5, right, is the plank for mixed reality, because that's taking a virtual environment and then you're putting a physical plank that you have to balance across. And now you're not just entirely interacting with virtual stuff. You've got this one physical piece of reality that you're using to make the experience a little more immersive. So mixed reality might be having a custom controller that like actually feels like whatever it's supposed to be, like a gun or a ping pong paddle or whatever. Or it might be a plank to walk across, or like tower tag is a really good example of something that might use mixed reality, because it's a laser tag game where you're teleporting from tower to tower, and each tower has like a pillar in the middle of it that's you can hide behind for cover. And you can actually put a physical pillar in the middle of the pod so that it feels like you're moving around it and you can put weight on it and stuff. I don't really know. Do you guys know any other like good examples of like mixed reality experiences or mixed reality software?
Or
Well,
any sports kind of things as well, like our hockey
Mhm.
stick.
Oh yeah, hockey sticks.
Having that like actual physical real life hockey stick in your hand when you're in a virtual simulation of hockey.
Yeah, and that one's really crazy because it's really accurate as far as like the tilt of the hockey stick and everything. I remember we tried out that passing simulator, and it just feels like you're actually like there with the actual stick passing with other people. Which just once that tracking technology gets even better and you can have literally anything, that's going to be really awesome.
Well, what do you think like stuff like arena scaled stuff that we did before is classified under? Because you're kind of like, if you set up like a little boundary space inside of it, you can technically interact with like cover and other stuff inside of the area. Would you count that as mixed reality?
Maybe. In fact, that raises the point, are other people in the space with you making it mixed reality? Like if we play VR laser tag and we're in separate buildings playing together online, that's definitely a virtual interaction. But if we're in the same physical space and we're just wearing headsets that make it look like a laser tag arena, that's kind of mixed reality now that you mention it. So I think I would count that. Anything like co-location or like arena scale.
Yeah.
Which, here's hoping the next Quest actually has official co-location support.
well, and another aspect of mixed reality is like James' background. It's where you impose like a physical person into a virtual world, because it's like a physical thing into. It's like kind of like what you're saying about it's like backwards augmented reality,
Yeah.
but also and just like something that I think that's really good at showing is like your physical spatial presence within virtual reality,
Yeah.
which is really difficult to like conceive if you've never done virtual reality.
Yeah. And it's also like, honestly, way more fun to watch the VR if you can see someone in it. Because let's be honest, for a lot of VR experiences, if you're watching it on a screen from someone's first person perspective, not only do you not really get the feel of what's going on, but it's also like kind of dizzying because they're moving their head rapidly, but you don't have any of their like peripheral vision. You don't have the context of what they're trying to do. So you just wind up with a headache trying to watch them. But seeing something like James's background, watching someone play Beat Saber where you're seeing their body move rather than following where they're looking is way more interesting.
Yeah.
Gives you a better idea of what they're doing.
Well, even as a comparison, like you can see the person inside of the exact space where they're doing stuff. On a normal screen, it might look something like this, and some people might just have no idea what it's like. So it's like you just see blocks coming, you don't know what's actually happening. You occasionally see people swinging their arms and stuff to Beat Saber, but like not everyone gets the idea of what it's like, because while that person's in first person, you're not. You don't see exactly what you're seeing right up close. Like things are coming directly at them in like half a centimeter distance, whereas you're like 10 feet away watching
Yeah.
a TV screen without doing stuff. Whereas this, you actually see the person directly interacting with the objects
And
firsthand.
you can get a sense of it. Yeah.
It's a better way to show off, I think, how virtual spaces work inside of headsets. Especially if someone's never done virtual reality before.
Yeah. Though I think it seems to me like what really all of this is gravitating towards is that like fully jumping into an immersive environment is cool, and I think we'll still see that. But there are all of these different industries that are pushing towards augmenting existing reality, bringing physical elements into virtual reality. I think for a lot of applications, from gaming all the way to like education, conferencing, telecommuting, the virtual web, is gonna want that like mixing of realities, because it's fun to jump into virtual reality, but when you totally lose your context of where you are, it can make it a lot harder to do a lot of things and to integrate the VR into the way you normally act and think. So I think we're gonna see way more like mixed augmented reality in the future than we are gonna see a lot of VR, even if we obviously are still gonna see VR.
Yeah, and like I agree with you, and that is also like a sentiment that I hear on just like different like VR AR podcasts, is that
Mhm.
I think that AR is going to be more the tech of the future. Like VR is absolutely going to still be here, and like there's still going to be really incredible experiences for it. But I think that AR is going to have a much higher adoption rate, and it's a little bit easier to integrate, because it's like we're already integrating it. It's already integrated into the system. Like it's
Right, we all have phones.
Yeah.
Boom, done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose the other thing is like one of the biggest struggles with virtual reality, and one of the reasons that a lot of the best headsets are tied to computers and clunky and tough to use, is that getting a well-rendered enough environment and getting the frame rate high enough that you can move your head around rapidly and not get sick from the computer trying to catch up to you looking around is really tough. And as we try to create experiences that look nicer and that do more, it's going to be hard to do that if we have to construct every single piece of a person's environment virtually. Whereas if I have a pair of gloves and a pair of goggles that just put me in this room, but then I have a cool virtual menu in front of me, not only do I still get to watch people walking in front of my house, but now I don't have to worry about turning my head, having the frame rate jog to catch up, and then having to take a 30-second break to like catch my breath and stop being dizzy, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like
Kind of grounding.
what was that?
I said, yeah, no, it's like it grounds you if you're in physical reality.
Yeah.
And virtual reality can be as crazy as you want because there's something physical there to hang on to.
Well, and like I think I kind of mentioned it, but we are getting closer to just like the XR, which
Yeah.
is literally just X reality, like cross reality and meta reality, like whatever you want to call it. But
Ooh, meta reality. I like that
Yeah.
word.
but it's just like, and that's language that we could argue about for 5 hours. But
Yeah. Super reality. I think I heard that one once.
yeah, but it's, I don't know, it's exciting though, and just like seeing everything come together and just seeing more adoption of immersive technology and these different realities.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so thank you all for talking with me today about different realities. So
All right. Yeah. Thanks for having us.
till next time.
Till next time.
All right.
Cheers.